No-till farming systems have led to an increasing reliance on herbicides, especially glyphosate-based applications, and after decades of applying up to 5 treatments a year, there have been consequences. Across all grain-growing regions, including the north, there's an increasing emergence of weed populations resistant to glyphosate. One strategy that can help grain growers address herbicide resistance is the double knock.
Over the last 4 or 5 years, I guess, we've been having increasing issues with controlling grass weeds in our fallows. And that's causing a lot of concern for growers. A lot more time on the spray rig, a lot more, some are moving into cultivating, and also, in those cases it's had some impact on their end result.
In the northern region, the weeds causing greatest concern include feathertop rhodesgrass, flaxleaf fleabane, as well as barnyard, windmill and liverseed grasses. And their control is requiring additional time and more money to be spent by grain growers.
In terms of an average increase in cost, I mean, it could easily have doubled their number of applications and their cost. And in some cases it's reduced their planting opportunities and had some impact on their final yield as well.
One way to minimise herbicide resistance and lessen the risk of glyphosate being lost as a weed control is adoption of the double knock strategy. A double knock is the use of sequential control tactics and can be 2 applications of a systemic herbicide a couple of days apart, an application of a herbicide followed by a cultivation, or more commonly, an application of a systemic from either Group A, I or Group M, followed about a week later by an application of a contact herbicide such as Group L. The object of the second application is to kill surviving weeds and stop viable seed from returning to the soil.
The timing of the double knock is very important, but it's not straightforward because it depends on A, what weed you're targeting, and B, what are the chemicals or the herbicides you're using in that double knock. But for a double knock that's using glyphosate as your first knock and paraquat as your second knock, the general rule is for summer grasses, you want the second knock to be about 5 to 7 days after the first knock. If you leave it longer than that, then the plant has got a chance to grow and is becoming increasingly harder to kill with the second knock. If you're using a double knock that has a Group A herbicide instead of glyphosate in the first knock, you can actually come in a little bit quicker than that. So it depends on how quickly you can get across your paddock and bring that second knock in. Again, you would not want to leave it longer than 2 weeks.
The double knock strategy has a number of benefits. It provides good control of glyphosate-susceptible weeds. Using a herbicide with a different mode of action reduces the risk of weeds developing resistance to glyphosate. And where weeds have a natural tolerance to glyphosate or resistance has developed, the second knock with a different herbicide provides commercially acceptable levels of control. In the northern region, 3 summer grasses are confirmed as having glyphosate resistance: liverseed grass, barnyard grass and windmill grass. So for a double knock to be used most effectively, you need to be aware of how and when these weeds emerge.
Liverseed grass and barnyard grass emergence patterns are quite different. Liverseed grass tends to emerge in one large flush at the start of the summer season, whereas barnyard grass will emerge in numerous flushes throughout the season, and this is in response to rainfall. Now, windmill grass is still poorly understood in terms of its emergence pattern. So, having an understanding of these emergence patterns will dictate how you control these weeds. For example, with liverseed grass, if it's coming up in one large flush, you only have one opportunity to apply a double knock or an alternative to glyphosate. However, for barnyard grass, you have numerous opportunities to target this weed, and it's important to take advantage of as many of these opportunities as you can.
Miss the opportunity and your weed problem won't just continue at its present level of infestation. A fleabane plant can produce up to 110,000 seeds. Feathertop rhodesgrass and barnyard grass also multiply rapidly.
Now each of these species produce a large quantity of seed, and the principle behind the double knock is to stop seed bank replenishment. So it's a great tactic to do this. In terms of other ecological aspects in relation to these three weeds, you've got, for example, feathertop Rhodes grass in central Queensland will emerge all year round. So there's opportunity throughout the whole year to use the double knock. It's quite a different situation when you go down to southern Queensland and northern New South Wales, because barnyard grass and feathertop Rhodes grass emerge predominantly in summer. So you then have to take into account the emergence patterns of these species as to when you're going to apply the double knock.
It's important to keep in mind that even though you'll be hitting the target twice within a short time frame, it's essential to correctly time that first spray. For summergrass species, you should be applying the first knock no later than the early tillering stage, and for fleabane, no later than the small rosette stage.
When applying the double knock to fleabane, it's critical to target small and young fleabane plants. When you have autumn emergences of fleabane, they tend to grow more slowly, so you have a little bit more time to get on top of them. But you want to target fleabane that are younger than 3 months. If you have fleabane that's emerging in spring, they will tend to grow much more quickly. So you've got to get onto them more quickly than the autumn emergences. The key though is to target fleabane that is younger than 3 months and no larger than a 5 centimetre rosette.
And while fleabane's autumn flush allows more time to apply herbicides, it's during winter that the problems for summer fallows take root. So managing fleabane in winter crops will minimise your problems come summer.
There are numerous options to improve your control of fleabane in winter cereals. For example, applying a double knock with or without a residual before the crop is planted will ensure you start with a clean sowing bed. In addition, you can apply post-emergent selective herbicides early in the crop to control your fleabane in crop, and some of these options actually have a residual component, so you're going to get residual control throughout the crop. In addition to these herbicide treatments, you can also grow a competitive crop. Fleabane is poorly competitive, so combining an in-crop herbicide with a competitive crop will go a long way towards reducing your fleabane pressures in the subsequent fallow.
Crop competition hasn't been widely used as a weed management tool in the northern region. However, it does offer grain growers another opportunity.
I think growers should be using the narrowest row spacings they can to capitalise on the crop competition they'll get that way, but they shouldn't do it at the expense of yield reliability. Unfortunately, narrow rows can, in some cases, cause poorer yield reliability. So, use the lowest row spacing they can without it affecting their yield results.
There are advantages to be had from adopting double knock as part of an integrated weed management strategy, and to get the best from it, grain growers should base it on their individual situation.
My advice to growers is, with your paddocks, think what your paddock history has been with your herbicide usage. If you've been using glyphosate, relying on it for the last 10, 15, 20 years, you need to really carefully monitor what's happening in that paddock. I would go out after each time I've used glyphosate and carefully look to see if there are any escapes. And I think that's my number one suggestion, is to go out there and monitor closely. And if you are able to spot those few isolated plants that have escaped and stop seed set, then you're nipping that problem in the bud before it becomes a major problem across your whole paddock or farm.
In the end, successful weed management will depend on how well control strategies have been planned and implemented. If you don't have the equipment or time for sequential spray programs, consider how else the result can be achieved. If you do have the time and technology, ensure your gear is correctly set up, you have any necessary permits, and the weather conditions are right, and you know what you are up against. Fleabane, feathertop and windmill grass all have a level of natural tolerance to glyphosate, and even susceptible populations are not reliably controlled by applications of glyphosate alone. One-off spray treatments require extremely high application rates. Double knock has been shown to be an effective control of these difficult-to-kill weeds, and APVMA permits exist for the strategy's use in fallows.